Republican Congressman Michael McCaul is the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, and he also sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee. Good to see you, sir. Appreciate your taking the time. Let me start by asking you this, Chairman McCaul. You know, we don't know how many chemical weapons Syria has, and we don't know where they all are. And yet it is pretty clear now that the entire world, including the President of the United States, is hoping that the world can secure them and get rid of them, and that this is how it's all going to work. Is it going to work?
Well, I've always said from day one, I think the plan should be to secure and destroy these weapons. There are no good sides in this war. There are no good options, quite frankly. You got a puppet of Iran using chemical weapons. Rebel forces, who are they? We heard from Secretary Kerry that at least 25% of them are bad actors, bad guys. The intelligence I have is 50%. I don't think we should be arming and supporting al-Qaeda in this effort as well. With respect to the amount of stockpiles, Syria actually ranks number 3 behind Russia and the United States. So they are sitting on an enormous amount of chemical weapons. And my concern, I think, as the Homeland Security Chairman, the biggest threat to the homeland would be these radical Islamist groups getting a hold of these chemical weapons, bring them into the United States and using them. And I think that's what we need to, first and foremost, protect Americans from. And
interesting you said it's the biggest threat to the United States. I have to follow up, though, Chairman, on something you just said. You said John Kerry said 15 to 25% of the rebels in Syria were so-called bad guys. You're saying 50% is your intelligence? I mean, that's a high number, and it's the first I've heard it.
It's a very high number, and I think it's something the American people should know, is that who are we supporting in this conflict? The rebel forces, again, they have been infiltrated and hijacked by al-Qaeda. 2 years ago, they were more moderate, but today it's a different game. And the fact is, I think we should be focused on the chemical weapons themselves, why I believe this latest breakthrough gives us some hope that we may be able to do something constructively to secure and destroy these weapons. And why do I say that? I don't always trust the Russians. I'm skeptical, like everybody else. But the fact is, the Russians have more influence over Syria than any other country in the world. And the idea that Putin now is putting this forward, you know, it's interesting. He's driving the foreign policy now globally, not the president. But I do think that an international force, an international coalition to secure and destroy these weapons is probably the best outcome in what has been known as a no good outcome situation.
It sounds like what you're saying, Chairman. You know, some have criticized the president because he said strike, and then he said I'm going to Congress, and then he said I'm not striking, and I want diplomacy, and I want to secure weapons that a lot of people say can't be secured. But it sounds like you're saying you think he's got the right idea, that you're not in the camp of people who think he's hurt his credibility here by changing his mind.
Not necessarily. I think he's damaged his credibility in the international community. When he went to the G20 summit, he walked away virtually snubbed by most of the countries. I think Putin put this idea forward, and I'll tell you why I think that's important, because we do share a couple things with Russia, even though they're a traditional enemy. One is that we both think al-Qaeda is the enemy and the jihadist. Number two is I think we both have a shared interest in seeing these weapons not proliferated throughout the region. Assad and his father have sat on these chemical weapons for 2 decades, have never threatened Western interests or the Soviets, or Russians, or America for that matter. If these chemical weapons end up in the rebel forces' hands, the ones that have been radicalized, the ones that are more the jihadist types, then I think we have a whole different equation to look at that, quite frankly, concerns me.